Hey, welcome to our podcast, Business for Beginners, where we share the good, the bad, and the funny of business. This is raw, unscripted, truthful business knowledge to help the aspiring entrepreneur grow their business empires. Welcome our guest today, Tanner Dallas. So Tanner is a serial entrepreneur. He's been in business for a long time now. We're not going to ask him really what he does yet. We'll get into that later, so stay tuned for that. But we're just going to put him on the hot seat early and start asking the hard questions right now. So Tanner, what's been if your employees had to ask you, if your employees were to say to you that you were a good boss, would you be a good boss? Would they say you're a good boss?
I'd like to think so.
You'd like to think so. So what about the employees you fired? Would they say you're a good boss?
I'd like to think so based on transparency.
So tell me about you being a boss, because you know people leave bosses, they don't leave companies.
Sure.
So I know what it is to be a shitty boss. Shit, when I owned my first company, I was a do it or die kind of boss. Like either you do the shit or I'm gonna fucking fire you right away. That's all I was all the time. And I had to learn how to become a better boss. So tell me an experience that you've had in your business, in one of your businesses where you've had to fire someone or your employees disliked you. Tell me something about one of those experiences and how that impacted your life and how you became better.
You know, I think the biggest thing is whenever you have a downturn in your business, you have to let somebody go.
Oh, that's hard.
Sure, and it's easy to fire somebody, but not tell them why. But I think letting people go is the biggest way you can demonstrate not only your transparency, but honesty and character as a leader. Just because of that fact. I mean, you're letting somebody go, that's their livelihood, they're collecting a check from you. But, you know, we went through a hard time in 2022 where we had to, it was early 2022, we had to really just slash staff and kind of reconsolidate our business structure.
Sure.
And this is for the Crooked Feathers brands, portfolio of restaurants. And that was hard, you know, because before that, we really didn't have that issue. When it came to like lower level team members, like I didn't have to fire anybody because we had general managers, assistant managers.
It's a lot easier that way.
It is, and you know, transparently early on, like that's something I never wanted to do. But of course, you know what happens. You know, my mom was in business forever, and it's like, you want to be a big dog, you got to act like a big dog. And she told me that growing up, and she was nails. You know, she owned multiple businesses, and she was a single mom about half my childhood, and did really well for herself. My dad did good too. I mean, he was a blue collar union worker, but like there's two different types in this world. Like,
100%.
There's the people that go, and then there's the safety nets.
Right.
And people.
My wife is a safety net.
Sure. So my wife came from a safety net family as well. So like she thinks when we first got married and started dating, like she thought my family's crazy. But my mom was on the opposite side where it's like people would be like, I don't know how that always works out for you, but like she just risk. You know, judging it.
Sure.
But I got lucky and I didn't have to deal with any type of employee issues like that early on. And I tried to avoid it. Like at first you try to avoid it.
Sure.
And you try to do things to get around it. You know, you try to compensate for them or, you know, go about it the delicate way. But then I came to find out that through when we reconsolidated our business and we had to let people go for reasons that were more monetarily. It was just like, you know.
If the money's not there, you can't keep paying them.
No, you can't keep burning in the red. It just doesn't matter. Or you can't keep just like staying a little bit above the green. I mean, there
are hard decisions you have to make in business that people sometimes don't understand.
Correct. And I think the easiest part with that was letting individuals go, but being totally transparent and honest and leading them with the truth.
Right.
Rather than giving them some subpar reason as why you're letting them go, or some people do it because they don't want to
You're just not a good fit or...
Yeah, I mean, like you're not helping the other person that way.
Right.
And I think that anybody that works with us will know and will tell anybody really is like, I'm one of the most transparent people you'll ever meet. I may not say what you like, but and it may not be right, it may not be correct, but at least
but that's okay though. At least you're honest about it.
And that was like the biggest growing steps for me was doing that and like restructuring. Where we were talking earlier when we first got started with Crooked Feathers, that brand in it started out as St. Louis Pizza and Wings.
Right.
And that was just a business relationship I knew with the owners and things like that. And it was more of a servicing/licensing agreement. I ended up switching it over later on. The more I learned about the food industry and things like that, it was like, it was a good business, but you want to do your own.
Oh, yeah.
So then late 2019, we started Crooked Feathers, and then that just took off. And for a period of about 2 years, like we didn't have those issues where it was like, you didn't have to fire anybody. You really didn't have to do that. It was more so like bad people work their way out, or like you do things like you don't put people on the schedule, like softly let them go, or like the quiet firing, things that were going on like that. But it wasn't until you started really dealing with the people that were up top and you had to have those honest conversations, because you just when you're first starting a business, you just think everybody magically thinks like you. You know,
What the fuck?
like,
Yes.
like you think that,
Dude, totally get that, dude. You think they think like you, but no, they don't think like you.
yeah, and that's just, it's incredible. You think people think 100% like you, and you don't understand. And I took me a while to figure that out. I was like, why would you do that? Like, why aren't you thinking? Even with family members. Like,
Dude.
and that was something I learned about me too, was like, I am not the best manager of people. I'm really good when it comes to creating concepts, selling the dream, and doing the legwork to implement that. But then like early on, I was trying to do all the other stuff too.
Sure. But you have to early on.
You did.
This is
you
part
did.
of being in business. When you go into business for your first time, sometimes you wear all the hats.
Yes. And that was tough because when we started growing, I kept trying to hold on to everything I was doing before.
Sure.
And kind of be like that go-to guy without giving out autonomy.
Nobody's good enough. Nobody can do it as good as me. I'm the best person here.
You know, and it was even harder because like my wife was involved too, and like my brother, we were all new to this, and you know, the best thing was like we learned and failed together, but I had to give up autonomy, like, and that was a struggle for me because like I'm a control freak. I want to control everything. I'm used to executing from start to finish.
Sure.
And the only reason I got out of the industry I was in before this, during college, I had a gym and a facility, and I trained pro athletes and regular athletes. One of the guys was like Pete Fearbased. He's the closer on the Rays. So like I traveled.
Is that baseball?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not a baseball person.
Oh, it's okay.
So
It's okay.
That's why I asked.
He
Devil Rays, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Tampa Bay Rays now.
Yeah. Oh, Tampa Bay. Okay, very cool.
But I was traveling the country, and like I always had this aspiration to learn and continue to grow. So like I would go to Exos Performance in San Diego, or go see Eric Cressy down in Jupiter, Florida, or Joe DeFranco up in New Jersey. And I'd do these seminars, and like this was during college. So I was going to Missouri Baptist. I had a full-time gym going. I was renting the space out of Vianney High School.
Nice.
And I completely refurnished it, reformed it. And the only reason I got out of it was because when you're 22 and you're seeing like a lifestyle you grew up seeing, or you're seeing lifestyles you want, I was really good at training people. I was really good with information. I was really good at making connections with people. I just didn't know how to make a good business out of it. And I jumped from that to going into restaurants and kind of the real estate space.
Sure.
Because I really wanted to capture the money aspect.
Oh, yeah.
And
You realize that the vehicle you're in isn't always the vehicle you're going to stay in.
it wasn't.
And that's okay to change it. This is what people don't need to understand. When you go into business, just because you start here doesn't mean you have to stay here.
Correct.
You can change vehicles.
And I think the longer I've been in business and the more things I've gotten into, like I feel like personally right now I'm on kind of like that J curve where it feels like things are coming together. Where like you go through the shit, and we went through the shit for a while.
Yes.
Because we went from one store to 2 years later to a second store to 6 months later a third store, and then that was late 2021, and the next thing you know it was a shitstorm of inflation.
Would you grow that way again? Would you grow so fast again? Knowing what you know now.
I would grow fast, but I would have the tools equipped. Like we were hiring people, general managers, area directors. Like I was hiring people, and I didn't have the experience hiring, but I was on perceived performance and perceived skills. I didn't necessarily know the questions to ask, but I would look at a resume. I'd call a previous employer. Like I didn't do enough vetting. I didn't do things. It was hard for me because I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. But I knew, okay, like I'm going to push the gas, I'm going to press the buttons, and we're going to see what happens.
Right.
And things went really, really well. Crooked Feathers was based on a high revenue, sales-oriented concept.
Sure.
Product quality, at that point in time, I give a 6 to 7 out of 10. But it was comparable to like Domino's, Papa John's. Like it was more so built on volume and specials.
Right.
Well, the thing was, as a business that was value-oriented, whenever inflation hit, everything rose for us. For example, chicken wings.
Oh my God, I know that went up. I talked to the guy at Dairy Queen. He was like, dude, you don't understand how much it went up. I was shocked.
That was 44% of our sales, okay? That price for a case was normally around $60.
Right.
That tripled within about 3 months.
Oh, shit.
So when we were talking earlier, and I was telling you, like, we went through that kind of curve where it was like walking on water. It was just boom, 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 boom. Everything building up, building up, building up. And social media was a little bit different too of a landscape 2 to 3 years ago.
Sure.
Everything was a lot cheaper, and like we hammered and crushed it with digital marketing.
Right.
But there were little holes in the ship leaking during all of that too, that kind of 2.5 year time period when we were building up, where our marketing was really, really good and we had really value oriented products.
Right.
So that kind of conflict where it's like quality of service meeting customers' perception of service, it conflicted a little bit, but the value was still there and the marketing was still there to where we kept growing every single month. We kind of hit a staff of inflation got really bad with the chicken wings. And we started looking at our margins and like they just dumped upside down. And that's where commodities like can crush you.
Oh, 100%.
And we weren't like a large franchise where we had contractual agreements for pricing set for 3 months, 6 months
right.
at a time. We were getting rebates, but it wasn't
not enough to
it wasn't
that. No.
It wasn't enough to offset that. So like we went from a position of God, we're making multiple 5 figures a month to everything it literally just reversed. Now we weren't losing multiple 5 figures a month, but like our margins flipped overhead because of that. So then it was like, okay, how do we open up our margins more? We tried so many different things, and what ended up happening over a course of about 6 to 9 months was everything was based on dollars. And it kind of fractured kind of like the business model we had because of that, because we tried to elevate prices, and this comes full circle to what we'll talk about next is we tried to elevate prices, we tried to cut product costs, and we did things that weren't...
You did all the normal things that you do.
We did all the normal things,
right.
But coming full circle was the wrong decisions to make because like, you know, there were holes in the ship. Like the service wasn't as great as it should have been. We were getting by because our marketing was fantastic. We crushed it with marketing. We crushed it with great pricing. So once we elevated our pricing, once we took away some of the coupons, and once marketing kind of flatlined, because just like the marketing ecosystem changes all the time. And what was working wasn't working. We kind of got to like this kind of like stagnancy where our sales weren't growing, but our sales weren't going down, but our prices were higher. But over time, like they started to drip a little bit.
Right.
So like you started seeing the holes became more magnified where the service and perception of customer value came into play.
Sure.
For us. Because like similar, you've been in plumbing businesses, things like that. Like you want to have as much control over the customer experience as possible.
Yes.
And because we were doing so well, not like we wanted to have a great experience. Like when it started out as me, my brother, my wife, my dad was helping in there, like it's Crooked Feathers 1.0.
You owned it. You owned that experience.
Yes, we owned that experience.
100%.
When we started growing really fast, we lost the experience.
Right.
And
that's common.
Yeah, and we can blame it on whatever it may be. But
you can only blame it on yourself.
Yeah,
There's nobody else to blame except for we as owners. We're the ones to blame.
Well, and I blame myself because I was too caught up in the dollars and cents.
Right.
And like I was just magnified.
Saw the gold, baby. I saw the gold.
Yeah, I mean, I was magnified on the spreadsheets.
Sure.
And I was running the business off a spreadsheet, not from the customer's point of view.
Right.
And you want to lie to yourself as long as possible.
Sure you do.
You want to blame other factors. You want to blame reasons that it's not working the way you want it to. And that's what we were doing. And it didn't hit me until you get to that point where it's like, okay, like this store itself is running red. We have to make a change.
Right.
And that was in May of 2022, which was last year. We had a Cottleville location. That store, for example, like when we opened up that store, like in our business, if you do 15, 16,000 a week, that's pretty good. At the time when O'Fallon was going, we were doing 24, 25,000 a week.
Nice.
So I mean, it's like 1.3 million in revenue.
That's on Bryan Road, right?
Yes.
Okay, right.
So opened up Cottleville. That store is ripping 20,000 to 22,000 a week from the jump.
Holy shit.
Yeah, but the problem was we weren't expecting that.
Right.
We went in thinking it's going to start off like Bryan Road did, doing 12 to 13. And that was kind of where like, in one sense, we're like, holy shit, like this is fucking amazing. But on the other side, it was like, okay, those were the holes in the ship that we weren't ready to patch, not only patch, but have structure around it.
Right.
And we went and opened a third store about 9 months later, and things were still okay, but it was really when inflation hit that everything started to sink upside down. So we took the Cottleville store in May of 2022 last year, decided, okay, like we are going to go back and we're going to cut, like I said, we're going to cut some of the overhead staff we have. So we got rid of some of the general managers, we got rid of the area director we had, and it was like, I sat down with Colton and Hannah, my wife, and said, we got to get a grip back on everything. And we got lucky a lot early on, but like the customer experience is not where it needs to be, and we have to restart there.
Right.
But not only restart there, we have to get this overhead off of our head, and we got to get to a place of green profitability.
You kill everything you can. You break it. I would say go as lean as you can.
That's what we did.
As lean as you can.
We got as lean as we could, and now like we were still working on the customer experience during that part, and we didn't know what was going to change with that.
Right.
We knew we had to improve it, but from a brand perspective, our thing was just like, first of all, like let's look at the model, like let's get as lean as we can. So it was like cutting services we didn't need, cutting everything, everything we didn't need. And then that store, Cotterville, that had the highest rent of all the locations. We paid, that store was open with pure equity, so there was no debt service on it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's nice until you lose $200,000.
Oh, I know. Brother, I know.
It's
when COVID hit, we lost $80,000 in 2 weeks because we had one employee sick. All of our employees got sick at one time.
Yeah.
80 grand in 2 weeks, just gone, just like that. For a small business, that hurts.
I know, and you know, people, that number at the time felt so magnified.
Oh,
and,
dude, 100% it does.
But I think like the cool part about it is looking back now, it's like that perception of like you don't have as much fear because it was a small blip in things.
Oh yeah.
And like it makes you more confident to move forward.
Oh my God, yes. If you can make it through that hardship, you can make it through any hardship.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of like what I said, my mom said earlier, like if you want to play like a big dog, you got to act like a big dog. And like, you know what, you're scared to lose $200,000, like you're not going to be able to do anything because that is just that's fear. And like I said, like that was me thinking, wow, I'm never going to be able to do this again. It was that fear-based mindset.
Oh yeah.
So in May of 22
it's scary, but honestly, it's scary sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
When you don't know what it is that you're about to experience. So my accountant always told me, he said, Eric, look, listen, you got to understand, these are the ebbs and flows of business. And I'm like, but you don't fucking understand, dude. You don't understand. Like, we're fucking struggling. He's like, no, dude, calm down. This is just the ebbs and flows. And it took me probably 4 years of learning in my first business of, oh, this is just normal. It's okay.
Yes.
We adjust, we adapt, we adjust, we evolve, we adapt. Versus then when I kept starting other businesses, it was really simple. I'm like, oh, okay, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. But when you don't know it's normal until
you go through it.
Until you go through it. And that's the biggest thing about it.
Yeah, and I had never gone through it before. It was always just like an escalator going up.
Did you cry?
Yeah, like I got super depressed. I mean, in all transparency, like I got to like almost a suicidal state. Like it was like my whole life, like I walked on water with things and like everything I did was really good. And I had that form of imposter syndrome too. And like I had a form of OCD. And I went to therapy, everything, because like those were some of the, like not flaws, but the issues I was having that led to the downturn too, because like I was so obsessed with it.
Right.
And you get so obsessive that it becomes part of your identity.
Sure.
And when it became part of my identity, that's when it was the problem. The business was my identity. The things that the business was generating.
And when you're losing your identity, it is devastating.
Yeah, and it was a hard time. I mean, like I went to therapy, went to a psychiatrist, and like I'm always open about mental health with people because like
I love therapy is the best thing in the world. I think.
Yeah, a lot of people think they don't need it, but like that, with kind of the tragedy in my head at the time that was going on, is what got me to the place I am now. And I am thankful for it. I mean, like I tell people all the time, like they think it's scary, but like, when you hold the Glock 19 to your temple and like you think right there, like, which I did too, there was a point, it was January 29th, 2022. And like, I would just, at that moment in time though, the reason I didn't do anything was because like, if I'm not scared, if I'm this confident, bold to do something like this, there's nothing else I should be afraid of.
See, my son committed suicide.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, that was in 2019. So I understand, from a father's perspective, as to now I do when I look back, but I understand those feelings of hopelessness as well.
You do, and nobody understands it, and that's why I'm always transparent with people because you don't want to go get help. You don't want to.
No.
And like you think people are going to think you're crazy. You think people are going to think certain things about you. And I don't know if that's the media's manipulation of things. I don't know if it's people generally.
It's the stigma because you're a dude.
I guess so.
You look at you. You're a strong guy. You're young, strong guy. So my son was in the military for 7 years, and in the military, it was really the big stigma. You don't go talk to anybody about your issues because if you do, they're going to demote you.
Sure.
You lose your identity. So what happens? And what happens with you is it's a stigma. You don't want therapy. Like, you're going to go therapy. Well, you're stupid. I mean, people look down on you for therapy. I'm like, dude, therapy is the best thing you'll ever do for your entire life. It's about perspective shifts. Therapy gives you a new perspective.
It does. And
I'm proud of you for doing that, dude.
Well,
I really
appreciate
am.
that.
I sincerely mean that.
But that's 100% of it, though, is it's the perspective. Just like sitting here now talking about a $200,000 loss plus, I mean, like, it's the perspective. You have a different perspective over things. I've gone through this. I can do this. But that was huge because those two, and that was a bubble bound to burst, especially as a male. You have this ego, you have this identity, and it builds up with all the successes you have. And you feel as if you are that identity.
Right.
Not what's inside. Not, as we spoke earlier, like not Tanner Dallas, the brand.
Right.
Crooked Feathers and my career and these things are extensions of that. But like me, the person, the character, the transparency, when I started to separate those two was when things started to come together. And like, I'm a big meditation person. Like I'm a goof. Like I love meditation.
I love it, dude.
I love journaling. Like
My mind goes too fast to meditate. My mind's like, whoo, whoo.
I try to be very self-aware.
Right.
But going back to what we were talking about was like 2022, we had to close down the store in the middle. That was an ego hit. We sold off as many assets as we can. St. Louis Kulashi came in. Like, I'm grateful they came in and took over our lease.
Sure,
because that was
100%.
burning $5,000 plus a month.
Dude, it eats you up fast.
It does. And the cool things that came out of that were like we started a frozen pizza brand.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's in Straub's markets and it's like direct shipping as well.
Nice.
That still goes on. And like that was a byproduct of like, okay, well, we just closed the store down. We need to make revenue.
Right.
We need to generate revenue. When I worked for this guy named Gary Gruey, he's a real estate mogul in St. Louis. He's one of the best mentors I've ever had. But like I remember he would always just be in the office saying, hey, we need to generate some revenue. And it's like, whatever it takes, like you need to generate revenue. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm walking through a Schnucks and a Dierberg's and I'm like, there's no keto pizzas. I don't see anything like that. We went to a pizza expo where we saw a chicken crust pizza. I looked at my wife. I'm like, we need to figure out how to make this because if we buy from them, it's going to cost $6 a crust. If we make it ourselves, it's going to cost $1.
Right.
And our spread on a product that costs after ingredients $3, selling it for $11 is much better than something that's $9 for $11, especially if we're talking in volume.
Huge.
So we figured that out, and this was at the lowest point where it's like we got to generate revenue. And people on the outside probably think like, oh yeah, that was cool. Like they're doing this just for fun. It was like, no, we're fucking doing this because we need some motherfucking money. We need some money. Like that's what it was. We needed money, and we started it. It took off really, really well. I mean, there was a point where we were doing 600-700 orders a week.
Nice.
And that only winded down when we had Blakely this year, which is my daughter. She's about 7 months old.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And then that's when I got going into the other career I'm in. I don't even call it career. It's like small business because that's what it is.
Right.
And we winded that down just because at that point in time, once full circle, 2022, May of 2022, shut down Crooked Feathers Cotteville. October, Crooked Feathers Cotteville. That store itself was taken over by St. Louis Kulashi, wiped our hands with that. We had St. Charles, we had O'Fallon, both under the Crooked Feathers brand. October 2022 last year, we sold the last bit of interest we had in the Quick Hit Fitness franchise labs, which are down in Southwest Florida. And got out of that. That was good too because like that was a good concept.
Sometimes it's good to let go of things.
It was.
It's freeing.
It was freeing to let go of things. And then going into this year, we had our baby and we were just riding in that state of like, okay, like things are okay now.
Right.
It's not where we want to go. But like we really were trying things like we're going to spend 6 to 9 months. We're going to try to rebuild our brand back up because that's what it is. We lost our brand.
Sure.
We didn't have the correct service. We didn't have the correct, we weren't doing things the right way as we see it should be done.
Everything was
now.
Transactional versus experiential.
Correct.
Right.
And I started getting bigger into social media and I started doing like videos of like new places opening up, things like that. And I started to realize, okay, I was identifying this.
I get your text messages every week.
Really?
I really do. My wife's like, tell him I got a text message the other day. She's like, tell me that yesterday.
That's
like,
funny.
tell him I got the text message. We get it all the time.
Well, yeah, and what's coming up next is a lot different, and we'll get into that. But I started doing videos of new restaurant openings, things like that, and like I was like really identifying like what makes brands good. And I spent 6 to 9 months just like identifying like the customer experience,
sure,
the menu, everything that goes together. So it was like, okay, let's take what we did wrong. And most people would just say, okay, well, I'm just going to let my leases run out, or like I'm just going to make the little bit of money I can, or do things like that. And to me, that's just not worth it. It was really like, okay, my brain was, we have 2 locations, we got all the equipment we need, we're paying our overhead, we have all the team we need. Let's do some type of rebranding and change what we're doing to match that experience we want to create. Because we don't have to go out and get a space. We already have that. We don't have to go out and find team members. We already have that. We don't have to go out and find a bunch of, general manager or anything because we have that. Like, and my wife's perfect. Like right now, like she helps oversee things and my brother's 100% involved. And we have a good team now.
Sure.
But the brand reputation that kind of like went away a little bit, we tried to build that back up, but that's a very, very hard thing to do.
Once you lose that brand, that's challenging. Even if you say, oh, new, because you see a lot of businesses, new ownership, new this, new that.
We tried all that, and like it wasn't, and I understand because I always am self-reflective of like, if I had a bad experience somewhere and somebody pushed that out and said, new this, I never fucking go to that place. I don't care. I'm just saying, like, I just don't. And that's what my honesty, where it's like when I'm talking to my family or the team or anything, it's just like, okay, I get that you want to think this. You want to think this is going to work.
Right.
But if it is you, how would you feel?
Right.
And the answer is usually no. And then like that's where St. Charles within the next month is going under a rebrand. It's actually been undergoing a rebrand, but the interior is being redone. There's a
So
bunch.
let me ask you this question. What are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again under the rebrand? What policies, processes, systems have you put in place to make sure this doesn't happen again as a business? Because I think in business, anybody who needs to understand this, if you're new in business,
Correct.
you're in business, systems, processes, and policies are designed to help you be successful.
Sure.
What are you going to do differently?
So let's just talk about St. Charles, because that's the O'Fallon Bryan Road. It does pretty good right now still, but we're gonna change some variants of that.
Sure.
Because another thing to keep in mind is too, all of our models had different interiors, different layouts, different
Right.
seating requirements, things like that. So nothing was aligned jointly. So St. Charles, for what it's worth, is going to undergo a rebrand, and believe they came together on the name. It's going to be called Two Bros Pizza Co. But what is different about it is the question. Everything from the experience is going to be different.
When I walk into the store, what's it going to be like? Because when I look at an experience,
Yes.
when I walk in, I have a very high expectation of what I think something should happen. Because being in business for so many years, I learned the power of experience.
Correct.
You go to what's one like? Let's give you an example. A restaurant in Florida, we have a condo at the beach.
What part?
Panama City Beach.
Okay.
Dick's Last Resort. Dick's Last Resort. Their food is just average.
Yes.
It's not great food. But it's about the experience. When you walk in, it's always about the experience starts as soon as you walk through that fucking door. So what's it going to be when I walk through your front door?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of different things to change that experience, and I'm the one that's always voicing it, so I can give you a perfect exemplary.
I want to hear it, absolutely.
Okay, so when I look at our storefront, the first thing is when you are going into Zumbel Shopping Center, and I always forget if it's Schnucks or Deerbergs. It's right off Zumbel.
I know, I
I've been
forget
there a
which one it
million
is
times.
too.
I know.
That was Deerbergs. Yeah,
Deerbergs.
Schnucks is right down on the left.
When you pull in, we're to the very left of the shopping center in the corner by Sushi AI.
Sure.
The first thing that I look at when I'm coming through is not only the signage, but what's on the windows.
Right.
When I look at our signage now, and I did taste testing out in front for a few weeks just to kind of see.
Oh, nice.
Well, I wanted to see where people's perception is, not only of the food, but what's your perception of when you see crooked feathers in the branding on the windows? Everybody thought it was fried chicken. Everybody thought it was some type of fried chicken, some type of chicken. Now, the thing is you don't see a lot of pickup delivery chicken places. You have Raising Cane's, you have what's that one down Highway K? Popeyes.
Yeah.
You have KFC. You have brands like that. They're all drive-through concepts.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing that came to my mind, was like just the name in general. Not to say the name is bad. It was just like, is our name resonating with our customer base? Because we want to sell pizza.
Right, 100%.
And pizza is not only a great margin item, but we want to serve really good pizza, and that's a delivery item.
Sure.
So not only the signage, but also like what you see when you walk in. So is the signage going to display what we're actually doing? Is the signage on the windows going to display for our new concept the fresh dough, the fresh cheese, everything being fresh, versus before we were doing more manufactured style because it was value convenient.
Sure.
So we wanted to not only showcase what we're doing, but showcase why we're different. You come in, right now everything is closed off. You can't see into the kitchen. I don't like that. We're cutting in a big opening to where you can see through. I feel it's important from a customer's perspective to see what's going on in the back.
I've worked in restaurants for years. I understand what that is really well. I know what happens behind the doors that you don't see behind.
Correct.
I was a teenager. I did that kind of stuff.
Correct, and I don't like that.
Creates good transparency is what it does.
Correct. Back in the day, like during COVID, like when we built the space, it was more so because like people would freak out about everything. And then once again, you don't want people to have any reason to freak out about anything. So why would you do that?
Sure.
It's just one of those learning experiences where it's like, okay, now we are opening that up so you can see through. The colors are going to be bright inside, and you're going to always be greeted. That's another thing too that
huge.
Correct. And like right now, somebody can walk in, and this happens at other restaurants too. Like if you have two people working in the back and they don't hear somebody come in and you can't see up there, you're looking around. That drives me nuts.
Oh yeah, you're like, what do I do? Because it's your first experience, you don't know what to do.
You don't know what to do. You don't know where to grab a menu. You don't know where to look at the menu. So then we come forward to the ordering experience in the menu. The menu, very similar to what we have now, but there's a lot of differences in it because of the product quality. We're going all fresh dough. We're going all fresh sauce. All things that are going to be great product. It's no longer value style. Two things can happen when we do fresh, great product. Our margins get lower.
Sure.
So there's more labor cost. but our margin on the product, the margin actually spreads, but the product cost is a little bit lower.
Right.
We can lower our prices a little bit, and we're going to have more transparent pricing. So it's not going to be all the coupon sale things. Like, one thing about Stefanina's, which I really do like, is their transparent pricing.
Right. I like that. Just tell me what it's going to cost.
Correct.
Don't sell me on a fucking coupon, because coupons, I don't use coupons, and I think most people don't use coupons, and those that do, maybe they're not your customer.
They're not. And that's another thing too, is like, we have utilized coupons heavily in the past. A lot of pizza concepts have utilized coupons heavily.
Right.
You mark your items up, you bank on the coupons, and hopefully those one-offs pay the full price for whatever it is. I don't think that's the most transparent pricing structure. I don't like it. And there was another thing of like, what is my experience I want to expect? What do we really like to go to? I don't like having to search coupons. It's not transparent. I'd rather, instead of having like right now, just like a lot of other chains similar to us, you do buy one, get one half off.
Sure.
You do the buy one, get one free. Like, and everything's BOGO. It's so confusing from a customer perspective. And then, here's another thing too. When your prices alter and there's a bunch of inflation or there's, a pricing squeeze, now I have to elevate those prices that much more to compensate. And that was another thing that we lost some customers over, was like, we used to do BOGO free, but then we elevated the prices to match up with inflation. And then the perception is, wow, this is $28 for a pizza? Well, but you can do BOGO free.
Right.
I don't want BOGO free. So from that experience now, when I'm looking at the menu, it's more transparent, it's simpler, it's easier. And everything from a product perspective is fresh. The delivery of the service. We switched, like a lot of places did during COVID, to DoorDash delivery. It's called DoorDash Drive.
Right.
It's the ability to utilize DoorDash to fulfill deliveries whenever you are swamped or just don't have enough drivers or anything like that. Papa John's does it. Pretty sure Domino's just switched to offering it. And once again, what are we talking about? We're talking about concepts that are large brand concepts.
Sure.
I don't believe Emos does it. Stefanina's doesn't do it. A lot of your local
places. Prime opportunity for you.
Well, we were using it, and the customer experience from that isn't as good either. We were using it because of need, based on volume. And then it turned into more of like a labor issue.
So do you think you do mostly more delivery versus sit-in?
Much more.
Much more. What about the person who comes to sit in? What about them? So how do you even know that they're a new client, never been there before? What do you do for that person to... So I look at everything from an experience perspective of, if you're a brand new person, you've never been in my store, and all of a sudden you come in here, how would I know you're a new client? How do I know to make sure this is the best experience you've ever had in a pizza restaurant?
Well, I think the thing that has to come down to is St. Charles is more pickup and delivery.
Right.
O'Fallon's dine-in. There's some strategies we're going to use for that coming up as we do that transition, which isn't going to take place till later this winter. But the thing is like, every person needs to be treated the exact same.
100%.
It doesn't matter whether they're a new client or not, or a new customer or not. It doesn't matter. And I think that's where people need to be greeted, and they need to be treated as if it's their first time, because they will tell you if it's not their first time.
Right.
Versus trying to guess.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter. You can take somebody's phone number and see if they're a customer or not, but I have to greet you before I get your phone number, so it's irrelevant.
Oh, yeah. So you can take me out on a date before you get my number?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So like when customers come in, they need to be treated the same way every single time.
Every single time.
Now, is that something every business can get better at? Yes.
100%.
Is that something we weren't as heavily focused on? No, we were not. But that's why we went through all of this.
Well, sometimes we get lost. We get lost in the numbers. We get lost in the humdrum. We get lost there's just so many factors I think people don't understand in business. You have all these great intentions.
Correct.
But sometimes it just doesn't happen.
And
you just lose sight of it. But now you found sight of that, and now you're going to change those things.
Well, for example, the DoorDash delivery, that was a problem that we had where if you order a pizza from somewhere, what is the variables that could happen if I outsource that third party versus doing it in-house?
Right.
That's something customers didn't like, that we did, and that's something like at St. Charles, we are not going back to that.
No, not at all.
And it's taking, so long story short, it's taking everything that didn't work good, and now not just throwing a brand new name on there, not just throwing some new marketing together, it's like, this is going to be a brand new concept. The shit's going to be fucking good.
Well, I live in St. Charles now, so I'm excited. I'll go there.
Well, and that's what we want is like, I don't want somebody like yourself to go in and be like, that's okay. Because what do I have to do to get somebody that goes to another place? I have to make sure that is exemplary and it's amazing product.
Yes.
Because if you've been going to Stefanina's for 20 years, you've been going to Emos for 20 years, you've been going somewhere else and spending your life going there, I have to wow you. I don't want to wow you. I want to wow you with the product. I also want to have good pricing, but I really want to wow you with the product.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because I will pay more
all
to
day
go
long.
Get somewhere that is really good.
Yes.
And down south, especially my mom lives in Tampa part-time or Sarasota. We go try new places all the time down there. It's a different world down there. You have to be on your A game if you want to be good down there.
Oh, dude, you're not lying there.
You have to be good, and you have to have good product. You have to have good service. But most importantly, the product has to be dynamite. It has to be unique to the brand, and it can't just be some shit slapped together. And I'm not saying our product was bad before, but it wasn't great.
Right.
And that's what we want. And that's anything we do moving forward, we want great product, and that's what we want to be as a local community staple. I don't want to have multiple Two Bros Pizza Co's. I don't want to do that anymore. None of us do. We have great local spots.
And people who live local, love local, and anybody who visits wants to go somewhere they don't have where they live. When I go to Florida, I don't ever want to go to a restaurant that I have here at home. I never want to do that. Correct. I want to go someplace that's a local, and I can show you so many great local places to go. Great experience, great fun. I think that's what it's about, is that local experience. Because if you can make that a local restaurant, people will flock to you.
And your branding becomes that much easier.
Oh my God, so much easier.
And that's what we want. I don't want the corporate style. What my vision was before was like grow with just such aggressiveness and create a franchise model. That's what I thought was the end goal.
Right.
I didn't, like, that takes so much more, number one, money and leverage to do.
Right.
To get through those turbulent times. And like, we just hit the most turbulent time in the history of restaurants during COVID that anybody ever saw. It was very volatile.
Oh my God, yeah. How many restaurants went out of business?
A lot. There's still more that are struggling. I mean, There's a page called St. Louis Pizza Connoisseurs, and you see it. I just saw it about another one recently, and it was just, a lot of people just create one-off concepts, throw a name on there, and they just run it like a mom and pop, but like the service just isn't great enough.
Right.
And they struggle, and they're working it every day. I'm like, that's not the goal. That's not the goal for our business. That's not the goal for any business. We want to have a very successful, profitable business that's based off delivering a great experience.
100%.
Because I think both can be fair, both can be made, and both can be done.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a choice.
Correct.
It's a choice of training. So we always ask these three questions, and I use these three questions all the time. When you have employees, you have to ask this first question is this: does the employee know what's expected of them? You always have to ask that. If they don't know what's expected of them, you have to make sure they know. Then we ask the question number two is has the employee been trained to do what's expected of them? You say, well, hey, I want you to make sure this is a great experience for them. But their idea of a great experience may be completely different from yours. Correct. If they're not trained. And I always say, have they been trained to a competent level you can verify?
Correct.
And then we ask, are they willing? Because if you've done one and two and then it becomes a willingness, then we just fire them. We move them along. If they're not willing. But if you've explained exactly what you want and you've trained to do exactly what you want, then, well, you've done your part. That's all you can do. And then measure it, monitor it, check it, watch it.
Correct. And that's not something we did the best job of before. And that's why, like, with this new changeover, like, we're making sure everybody that is great at what they're doing is involved from day one to make sure we work out the kinks, not with people that are low-level players.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's disrespectful to any low-level players. I'm just like, we want to have as much grip and control from the start to where we can build out exactly the systems we know
100%.
That need to be. Versus when we were growing and we opened Cottleville and St. Charles, we did not do that. And you can tell by the way O'Fallon sustained its business from being under management for over a year with just us versus the other two.
Sure.
And what the other one came to be. So I agree completely. And that's something that we're changing in the way we do things. Now, it's hard when you have an existing concept because you're caught in between like bad habits and things that have just...
Oh my God, yes.
So this will be our first true test for a newer concept to do that.
When do you launch that one?
Looking like the second week of October.
That's so exciting, dude.
Yeah, no, it is. It's fun because I enjoy doing things that make an impact, and I enjoy things that like other people get to enjoy, and that's what I've really found that I
Sure.
like. That's why I like social media. That's why I like everything. To me, that gives me purpose. It gives me reason, and there's a part of it too. Like, I want people to know who I am and what I do, but I want to provide value to them as well, and that gets me going. Like, I love that, and I love being connected with people. I love being networked with people, and I love doing things that I can do that make an impact. So to me, it is like I want something that's really cool, not just because it's profitable, but because I want people to know that that's what we did.
It's great. It's
Yes.
exciting. It's fun.
Yes, and I don't want it just to be okay. I mean, having an okay concept and focusing on numbers is, I don't want people to go there and be like, yeah, I went to Tanner's place, shit fucking sucks. I don't want that. Like, I don't.
No,
like,
dude, that's the worst.
I don't want that because, and that's another thing too, is most people won't ever tell you the truth. I'd say that all the time. Like most people have too much of an ego to tell you the truth.
Right.
They are scared of what you'll think, and like that's something I love breaking down with people is getting them to understand too. Like you can be 100% transparent and honest with me.
Because people, when you think of reviews, how many people don't leave a review who
Correct.
wanted to leave a review?
A lot of people.
They're just like, you know what? It's not where I just won't go. They just won't go back.
Correct.
But the problem with that is this: is you don't ever get the chance to fix something because you don't know it exists.
Yeah, and we started.
That's the big issue.
We started doing this email type of thing where if you ordered online, it would get customer feedback reports, and that started about 6 months ago. And that was a lot of the information we were taking into this new branding too. Was like just collecting, like even me doing customer samples, things like that. It was all like data collection.
Right.
It was like collecting information, collecting what people want, what people perceive. And a lot of big brands spend a lot of time and money and marketing on this. When you first start a business, you just think I put a name up there. I've got the best product because I have no understanding of what other products are out there.
Right.
It's just what I know. It's just what I was sold. It's just what I'm doing. And for us, like going through the bad stuff made us realize we'll learn a lot about the business. Just like, for example, yourself. Like if you create a plumbing company, you do it in 5 years. The next one's probably going to take 3 to get to that number. The next one's going to take 1. It's like you learn all the shortcuts.
Oh my God, dude!
And
the shortcuts. Yeah,
and I don't even like saying shortcuts. It's just you know the no.
You shorten the learning curve.
You know what not to do, and the stuff that you try to keep reasoning yourself that you were doing and wasting time doing it.
Right.
And I think that's what is exciting about this is like it's the first time where it's like, okay, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now, over 5 years. And for me, it's exciting because it's like now I look at it and it's like, man, what the fuck was I doing 5 years ago? Like seriously, like
you were doing what you only knew. That's it.
Yeah, and I love those moments because every time I start thinking like that, it humbles you, but it's also like I'm on the right track. Sure. I'm on the right track if I'm constantly being aware of why was I doing that? That was not what I should have been doing. But here's what I'm doing differently now. And it's like, man, I can't believe we're survived like that. But once things start coming together, which is like the feeling and the vibe and just everything it's been recently.
People are hungry. That's why you stayed, brother. They were still hungry. They needed that food.
Correct.
And convenient. It worked.
It worked. But was it worthwhile?
Well, to the client, to a point, yes. But to you, when you look back, no, not at all. You think, I could have done better. I know I could have. And I say the same thing all the time. I'm like, I can always provide a better experience. I always say, wherever I go, I want whoever I meet to feel like I made their life better that day.
Yes. And
I think that's the same with any restaurant. When you walk into a restaurant, I want it to be a phenomenal experience. So we went into a restaurant down on St. Charles, on the new area in St. Charles. We walked in. My wife and I stood there as the two people behind the desk never looked up at us once, never talked to us. We waited. We watched the other person just wait, ignored. And it went on for like 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Then they never look up. They said, okay, just follow me. And this was a high-end restaurant. And I was like, told my wife, I said, what the fuck? So now granted, so we go sit down. Our server is a male. We're sitting there waiting. And now we're waiting even longer because no water, no greet, no nothing. Okay, I'm like, maybe they're busy. Okay, I can live with that. And two of my daughters are servers. I understand this. Another table comes in, sits down, but it's 2 young, pretty girls. The server, who, even though we've been sitting there for probably 20 minutes now without any water, without even a hey, how you doing? Give me 1 second, I'll be right with you. Something. He goes to the 2 young, pretty girls.
Yeah, that pisses you off.
I'm like, my wife's like, what the fuck, dude? I mean, we tip really well when we go to restaurants. But the point was the service was way below what I expected for a high-end restaurant.
Yeah, and that's your perception now.
And so will I ever go back? No, I will never go back to that because I think it's just, plus the food was just It wasn't, it didn't, now maybe if the food is phenomenal, I would have went back, but it was a horrible experience. And that made me not ever want to go back there ever again. That sucks, dude.
No, it does. And, early on in business, when the gravy's good and you're printing money, you think those opinions don't matter.
Oh,
and that's like something we experienced where it was like, you would get feedback like that. And like at first too, it was like, my ego was just too big. And like you just think, you know what? Like, what are you talking about?
You don't know
like,
anything. Oh, yeah, I've been there, done it.
And that's where it's like the oh shit moments where it's like now it's like their perception, like perception's reality.
100%. I tell all my employees all the time. I said, look, we have no business without our customers.
Yes.
I don't write your paycheck. The customers write your paycheck. They give me the money to give to you.
Yes.
But otherwise, without them, we have nothing. So we have to make it a better experience.
And I agree with that. And that's a big thing of perception of the business owner too. And I wouldn't go back to that place. And that's where you have to look at yourself and be like, are people having that same experience here? And personally for me, like, I didn't love the experience that people were having at either location. Yeah, people were still coming in. Yes, people were still ordering. Yes, we're still making some money. Yes, we're doing.
But was it what it could have been?
It's not what it could have been. Like, to me, it's more of a pride thing.
Right.
And like I said, I don't want somebody going in there because what matters more to me is my reputation.
Sure.
And I don't want somebody coming in there and saying, yeah, Tanner's place fucking sucks.
No.
And I mean, the brutal honesty of like, that's
because your ego may be here, but they'll deflate that ego.
Correct.
Or the numbers will deflate that ego for you.
No, and you don't want that. And like, that's just, what's the point of doing something if you're not doing something cool, I guess? Because cool can be profitable. Profitable can be cool.
100%.
And it was that learning experience through 5 years and also talking to business owners, not thinking knowing that you don't know shit about shit still.
Right.
And I started reaching out to more experienced business owners, reaching out to people in different industries and seeing like, okay, where is success meeting? Like, what are they doing differently? And that was like the biggest learning curve. And that's how like this all came to be. It was like, okay, like, let's just do something way better, way more exciting. And like, let's do it right. And let's be patient about it versus when we first would start, it's like, I would try to do everything as fast as I could. I wanted to open the store as fast as I could, hire people as fast as I could, get open. Like, it was literally.
For you, it was about revenue, dollars, money.
That's all it was.
Sure.
That's all it was. And then throughout that, lost why we opened that first location to begin with. It was because we wanted to have something that served great pizza and great wings.
Family place, people going to enjoy, local place, people loved.
And
you just lost sight of it, that's all.
Lost sight of it.
And that's normal. It's not, I think the biggest lesson I learned in my first company was trying to grow too fast.
Yes.
I just barreled through, and I created so much stress for my life.
Oh, I was stressed out every day.
Dude, the stress was beyond anything I've ever imagined. And I look back, I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? But I was thinking like you. I wanted to hit numbers. And we grew. And finally I sold the business off, and I was never so glad to get rid of that business because I needed a reset. Then when I started my second one, it was so easy. I'm like, I'm going to do it this way. I focused on this. I knew I'm going to focus on this. I didn't focus. I decided, like, you can sell a lot of different things but I decided I'm only going to do, this is how big the pie is. It's, but I'm only going to sell this.
Yes.
Because this is what's profitable. This is what works. This is what's simple. This is what provides the best experience. So that's what I did.
Same thing with our new strategy that we're going forward with.
That's going to be huge, dude.
It is going to be huge, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it executes. Like, I know at the end of the day, we're going to have great product, and the execution's going to be there. And seeing everything else fall in line is what's going to be exciting. Because I don't like to think too far in the future anymore. I used to be thinking like, okay, like 6 months, 9 months. Now it's literally just like execute the day.
Right, execute the day.
That's a huge mental shift that I had because I was always living in the future.
Sure.
And dwelling on the past versus just focus on like military style. Like if you're in a combat mission, now I'm not in the military, but I think a lot of that equates to business and the mental mindset you have to have.
Sure, 100%.
People work on their physicality all the time, but they never work on the mental makeup. And being able to tune yourself and dial yourself in when it's like, hey, I'm distracted, I need to focus. Or to me, like I'll break it down to 15-minute increments where it's like, I may be anxious about this or this may be going on, but it's like, what do I got to do the next 15 minutes? And that's kind of the approach what this has been. Is just like, okay, let's be really good at the simple things and then not get too elaborate, not get too way out here on this, or, if it doesn't make sense, let's not do it. And let's just execute on what we know we can be really good at.
Sure, 100%.
Because I used to think that too. It's like, well, we'll add this, we'll add that. And like,
oh my God, dude, yes.
That's another stream of revenue, that's that. But it's like, hey, if we were really good at this, it would surpass all those.
Oh yeah.
And we'd have less headaches and better execution.
Oh my God, it's huge. What a huge difference.
I can understand where that, I think it's the same with every business. I think every business is very similar. I think plumbing, all these businesses, like there's the trade, there's how the trade is executed, but then how we deliver the service and how the business runs are why those tradespeople don't always equate to great business owners.
Right.
Because it's a whole different ballgame.
Oh my God, yes, 100%. I talked to a guy the other day, he goes, I don't know how to be a business owner. He says, he's in business, he said, but I have no idea how to be a business owner. I get it. I was in the trades since I was 18 years old. And I can tell you, I didn't know how to be a business owner. Mm-hmm. I had never done it before, but I was willing to learn. That was the difference.
But I'm sure you see that a lot, though. I mean, my dad's been in construction his entire life.
Oh my God, 100%.
He's one of the hardest workers I know. Both my parents were, but I mean, like those blue collar, union guys, like they go to work and they clock in at 5 a.m. He took all the overtime he could.
Oh yeah.
And I always thought like he's a guy that like, a lot of those guys do side business too. And like
sure.
They crush it with it, but it's just like, those are guys too. It's like, you have the skills, you have the intangibles to recruit clientele. and customers.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have that person. You have the personality. They just don't have the business acumen. And you see a lot of guys that go and say, "I'm going to start a contracting company," and they never really grow past that like multiple employee stage, and they're always recycling through employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been in that, so I don't know why, but I would assume that it's more so because they're so far spread out. They're trying to do the work while also trying to run the business.
Right.
And that pisses customers off, honestly, too, sometimes, because they're not doing the business stuff, and the customer's getting pissed about the business stuff, or, you know, they don't get the job done on time, and then, you know, just different things like that, or like the billing's messed up. And I see that a lot because I'll meet people or friends or family that are doing this, and just nothing is bundled together in a good structure.
There's got to be a system for everything you do. We always had a system for everything we did. There was a system. I hired my first business coach in 2011. Spent $25,000 on hiring a business coach. He had owned 27 companies.
Now, do you think that was worth it?
I generated an additional $500,000 in 1 year. So fuck yeah, it was worth it. But it was what I learned over that year of having them. Then I continued to hire them every year after that. Mm-hmm. What I learned has stuck with me for forever. So I have an entire course. I have a book on it, on exactly how to start your business to the point of scaling and selling your business. It's a complete course on exactly how to do that. Because like what you said, why do we lose employees? Well, for one, in construction, you lose employees because sometimes you're just slow. You don't have the business. The question is, why don't you have the business? Mm-hmm. Is it your business model? Is you guys provide horrible service? You just suck at what you do? You don't have the leads? In most cases, they don't have the leads. They don't know how to get them. They're a technician. They don't know how. It's the business acumen aspect of it. They don't.
It's that book they talk about, the E-Myth.
The E-Myth, yes. Yeah. So what I learned is I always wanted to work myself out of a job and hire people. I was very privileged to have very good employees. But now the first business I owned, I fired probably 20, 30 guys. I was horrible. But I had very high expectations. If you were a minute late, I'd fire you. I'm like, I wanted you to give a shit about the job.
Correct.
But I also knew I had to change who I was. And then when I changed when I started my second company, I knew so much more. It was so much easier. Dude, I was so much more relaxed and laid back. I'm like, this model over here of being a dickhead doesn't work. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I never yelled at employees. I didn't get into that, but I was more of just super high expectations. I didn't change my high expectations, but what I did was I learned how to be a better leader.
Correct.
You know, John Maxwell, so I spent tens of thousands of dollars going to John Maxwell events. John Maxwell is known for one thing: leadership. You learn to become a leader. If you look back here, these are all John Maxwell books, all right there. There's John Maxwell books up here. I love learning how to become a better me. We always say that if you don't like who you are, learn to become a better you. Mm-hmm. But how do you do it? You do it through mentors. Like this year, I hired Andy Elliott to be one of my mentors. So I'll have him as a mentor for a year. Hire 2 other mentors this year as well. Mentorship is one of the best things you'll ever do for yourself. And I know you got to know that because
I've never paid for mentors. I've always had really good mentors, but it's.
So like Andy Elliott, I paid. Well, I won't say how much I paid because I don't know how much he charges other people. So I'll just leave it. I paid a lot of money for 2 hours of his time. So we talk about experience. So we want to talk about experience versus transaction. My wife and I fly to Phoenix. We show up, and he's never met us. I don't know him. I'm talking to his personal assistant, Chris, phenomenal guy. We show up there. We get to his office about 15 minutes early, and I text Chad and say, "Hey, Chad," Chad's one of the other guys. I said, "Hey, we're here. Where do we go?" We walk up to the door. There's 9 guys waiting outside the door. 9 guys. Like, dude, everybody hugging us. We're walking up to Andy Elliott's office front door. There's 9 guys out there waiting for us to walk in, just hugging us. They're like hugging us, welcoming us. Thank you. We're so glad you guys are here. Walk in. People are leaving their desk, coming up there to hug us and to tell us they're so glad we're there. And it continued on and on and on. Then we got to Andy. So you would think that when you think of distractions, Andy's office is all glass walls. They're all glass. So there isn't like this. It's just all glass walls. Andy sits down in front of us. We have 2 hours. We're going to make the most of this fucking 2 hours. I paid a lot of money, like $15,000 for 2 hours. So he sits down. There's no phone. There's no distractions by him. Everything's going on around him. At not one point does he ever take his eyes off of us. He looks us in the eyes the entire time, to my wife and I. He gives us undivided attention for 5 straight hours. We learned. We got done. He said, "Eric," he said, "look, I want to mentor you guys. He said, I've only mentored really 2 other people. This is what I've done. This is what I've done. I want to show you exactly everything I've done. He built a 9-figure business in 3 years in a training. Like I love training people. I love teaching people. My favorite thing to do is teach and train people how to be better at what they do. He wrote down this list. He says, this is what I'm going to do for you guys. This is what it's going to cost. My wife now was shocked when she found out what I paid for those 2 hours. Because I didn't tell her. I mean, brother, when I say she was shocked, you could have saw her mouth fucking just hit the floor and an earthquake happened.
That's fun. I like that.
I mean, she was shocked. But by the time we were done with that 5 hours, when he said, hey, Eric, it's going to cost you this much money, which was a hell of a lot more than what we just paid. I mean, a lot more. She goes, do it. It's worth it. Do it right now. I'm like, what the fuck? I was shocked, like, holy shit, you're saying do this? Because my wife's super conservative. She's worked for MasterCard for 32 years. Sure. She's very conservative. Me, I'm like the risk taker. Jump right in, motherfuckers, let's go. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do know.
That's me. I mean, and she's the one who's like puts a leash on my ass and pulls me back.
That's good. You need that.
Oh, you 100% do.
Yeah, I got that too. I understand. It's good.
But now we'll go to all of his events. He has an event every single month at his office. They're in Scottsdale. We'll fly out every month. We go to an event. We'll meet people like Brad Lee, Wes Watson, Tim Grover. So we go as VIPs to every one of his events. My wife and I do. So this weekend we go to Florida just to do some stuff at the condo. Then the next week we'll be in Scottsdale. Then the next week we'll be back in Scottsdale again. So it's all about proximity of people. The being around the right people to get you where you want to go. Because he built a business to $100 million plus in 3 years. That's pretty fucking hard to do.
Sure.
Unless you know exactly. But he didn't know anything else either. He only knew what he knew. He hired, I think, Patrick Bet-David. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
He hired him as a mentor. So when I look at mentorship is huge as far as getting you from where you are to where you want to be. And that's the big thing about mentorship. People don't realize that. I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I would never ask you to invest into me as a mentor if I didn't invest into myself first. That's the big thing about me, is I'm always invested into myself. I tell them, I have to always learn to become better so I can always provide you better. Because you only know what you know until you know more. John Maxwell, he talks about the law of the lid in his book. So the lid is here, your knowledge is here, and you stop. If this is all you know, you don't go any further than that. Your business will only grow to what your lid is. Well, how do you raise your lid? You raise your lid by, you read a book, you watch a video, you learn something from somebody else who's done what you want to do, and that's how you continue to grow. So your mentors yourself have just been people you know, who've personally taken the time to mentor you.
Correct. High performers that invested time into me.
Which is huge,
and I've always been really just like available from a phone call.
See, and that's lucky to get. I see very few. Now I've mentored.
I proactively, I am. What I do is also in sales, so I mean, like, you know how to read the room, and you know how to capture others' attention, and you know how to not only capture them, but in some terms, win them.
Right.
But then also do things that are proactive to, hey, I want to work with you, and be transparent, and then also like be vulnerable to them. My question is, how do you know how to find the right mentor, and how do you know that they are a good fit?
You don't. That's the real. So I've hired a lot of mentors who I thought were absolutely fucking horrible. They just did not give a shit. It wasn't a good experience. They just didn't care. At the end of the day, you have to look at this, I think, are they doing what you want to do? Not are they saying they're doing what you want to do. Like me, I've owned 2 plumbing companies. I've owned a restoration company, a carpet cleaning company. We own a junk removal company. We've owned 3 condos at the beach. We've done all these different things that I've done. I've lived a life exactly the way I wanted to live my life. So when I mentor somebody, I teach them, okay, look, if you want to live a life, I don't want you to give your life away while you build a business. I want you to build your life while you build your business. That's what I teach them. I worked an average of 10 hours a week. My wife worked 50 hours a week working for corporate America. Mm-hmm. But she loves her job. She loves her job. But the point is, when you look at mentorship, are they doing what you want to do? Are they where you want to be in some way, shape, or form? You look at even like Alex Hormozy. We were talking about the books.
Yes.
People were paying him to do something, but now granted, was he a hyper successful person at that point yet? No, when you read his books, he was almost completely broke. But he had a system that worked, that he knew could work. So you had to take a chance on
We utilized this system whenever we were with the quick hit facilities, and it works.
And that's why I bought the book.
It was incredible. I remember that book, 2018, I think it came out, and I remember on a plane reading it, and it was super, just like the $100 million leads. And
oh yeah,
they just released. I mean, if people actually do the work, it
changes everything. Right. I had a guy hire me to coach his company. First thing he asked, he says, "Why do people fail when working with you?" I said, "Because they don't do the work." There's another book I have called Failure to Implement by Howard Partridge. If you don't implement the things you know you should implement, well, it's never going to work. I don't give a shit it's never going to. Just like with your business, if you know you need a better experience and you don't implement those things and teach your staff to implement those things, you're just going to get what you had. It's all going to go right back to what you had and where you are versus where you really wanted to go. But most of the people don't really know where it is they want to go. That's the biggest problem, is they don't know where they want to go. I've talked to so many different people who are they're making lots of money, but they're not keeping any money.
Sure.
I tell people all the time, you should be focused on profits over revenue, because you could have a business. I was talking to Adam, and he puts it on. He was on the podcast. He said, I was making more profit when I was doing $750,000 a year versus doing $1.8 million a year.
Correct.
And people don't realize, they just see, when people from the outside world, they see numbers. They say, oh my God, you're doing $4 million a year. But what they didn't see was that you were losing $20,000 a month,
sure.
$30,000 a month. They didn't see that part of the business.
And that's what people get excited about. Even when they talk about selling businesses, they always talk multiples.
Right.
Nobody gives a fuck if your business isn't profitable.
No, they don't care. Not at all. I talked to a guy this morning at the gym. He's like, hey, Eric, I really would love for you to teach me how to make my business to grow in a place where I can sell them. I said, you could. I said, but it's going to learn to depend on where it doesn't depend on you. Mm-hmm. He's the sole employee right now. Well, nobody wants to buy a job.
No,
well,
not
fuck,
at
I don't
all.
want to buy a job.
That's literally buying a job. You walk in and you're not only executing, you are buying the business too. So he's taking the profit, and I see this a lot though too, where people will say my business makes $120,000 a year. Well, number one, that's how much you're taking home or is paying for things that you're doing.
Right.
So even on the, if you look at the P&L, like it doesn't actually show 120,000. People say there's extra cash, things like that, because my mom had sold dance studios. Like that's.
Oh, right.
She's been through that experience.
Oh, yeah.
She owned dance studios, got into the convention world, and is a silent owner and a really, really, really big one. And she crushed it with that. She really did good because she got into the business of investing. So she started investing in startups and companies back when I was in high school. And I saw it from the other end of like, okay, what are you looking at when you're investing in a company? Number one. So we're talking like companies like local. That's like, hey, I need X amount of dollars. I want to open a small business, or I want to open multiple locations of a current business, or I just want to open, like for this one, it was a convention.
Sure.
And conventions are super big, and this was LA based, but people seem to overinflate the value of their business. And if you have to be there, that is a different, like if I look at a glass company that repairs, auto glass, sure. And I never step in there, I maybe dedicate 5 hours a week to it. Well, if I buy that business, to me, that's a business.
Yes, that's a business.
I was talking to a real estate investor at this charity event we were at this past week. It was last week. It was a Lexus's lemonade stand, and it was a charity event for kids with cancer.
Sure, I love it.
But he was talking about how he's looking at service-based businesses he wants to buy, and how he's running into the issue of an owner will say, hey, my business makes XYZ a year. But the amount of hours they're in that business, they can't outsource that because they're doing that job.
Right.
And their character and who they are is so ingrained with the business.
The business is them.
Yes. And I think that's where people get caught up from. And people think they're small business owners, but you're not. You're kind of chained to your business.
You are. You're 100%. And what I found is early on, I wanted to build a business that didn't depend on me.
Yes.
I wanted to build a business that I could sell.
So you reverse engineered it.
100%. And I teach that all the time. I'm like, so if you were to start a business today, a service business, I would tell you this. I would say, look, let's look at where you want to be 5, 10 years from now. Let's look if you want to have, and I'm okay with someone, if someone wants to just have just them and one other person, perfectly good with that. If they want to have a great job that they have control over time, my daughter owns her own business. She does eyelashes. She got a great job. She owns her own business. She owns her own job, but she also takes off when she wants to, travels when she wants to. She gets to live her life on her terms, but in order for her to make money, she still has to be there. Sure. Wherein, when I look at other people, I tell them, look at where you want to be. If you want to be like, say, a $3 million a year company, which, okay, well, then we reverse engineer that. Then we need to have, like, let's say, 10 service technicians, 3 people in the office, one sales manager. We start looking at exactly what they need. Now we want to build your pricing structure based on where you want to be, not where you are. Because where you want to be, because raising your prices all the time, you know for a fact, is fucking hard to do.
Yeah.
They're like, what, you're raising your prices again? Wasn't that the way the last time?
And it would have been better if you just had them right from the start.
Just right from the start, 100%. We teach them, get it right from the start.
Yep.
From the very start, but I want you to think about where you think you'd like to be, but also you're with your time. How much time do you want to be in the business? Because when you start, you're going to be in the business.
Yes.
There's no fucking way around it. You're going to answer the phone, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to be accountant. I learned to delegate everything from to a CPA, to a bookkeeper, to this, to that, everything under the sun. Just so I didn't have to do all the work.
No, I agree. And most people just want to save money. You know, they'll trip over pennies. Or what's the quote? It's like trip over a quarter to pick up a dime.
Right.
Just things like that. You know, like just focusing on like the small ancillary things that it'd be better just to pay somebody.
See, I bought time. I always bought time.
Yeah.
My thing was I could have made a lot more money in business if I wanted to, but I enjoyed my life. I raised 6 kids. I never missed a football game. I never missed a cheerleading event. I never missed any event that my kids ever did.
I think kids change. Having my daughter like changed my life completely, because it literally
your life values have changed.
It changed, and that was like it also gives you courage too, because it's like I'm not just doing this selfishly for me.
Right.
And before it was like that's why I did it.
Now you have an end goal.
Now I have an end goal, and like
Yes.
literally that's like not only what we do here, but the career I'm in as well, and like those certain things. Like everything is built around time with my family.
Right.
And that's just a personal choice. Like, and I tell people
It's
that
a
all the
great
time.
choice.
I meet people, and you know, I am sympathetic towards those that have to go and work 40, 50 hours a week at their job and do whatever. Like now, granted, we're entrepreneurs. Like we got to work when it's not always convenient.
100%.
We got to deal with the headaches that aren't always convenient.
Oh yeah.
But
when someone doesn't show up, guess who's going to be there? You are.
yeah, and people, it's like such a mind shift for like when you compare it. It's like apples to oranges, and that's where it's like. I was at home with my daughter the first 7 months, still am. Like I still spend tons of time with her.
Love that.
And I never want to get away from it now. So I will do everything possible.
Right. To build a business that doesn't depend on you. So
yes, to build everything in my life out to where I don't have to get away from that.
Oh yeah.
Where my wife doesn't have to get away from it, where, you know, I can still do whatever I want to do. Because once you understand that and once you have it, it's like you have 2 options. You can either be pissed off at the world that you don't have that.
Right.
Or you can go and make changes to do that. And just like a business isn't always going to work out. If a business doesn't work out, that doesn't mean you quit. You can pivot, you can change, you can do whatever. But I think most people just quit, or like they reach a setback and they're just like, you know, maybe people around them, you know, they try to comfort you and make you feel better. Like, it's okay. Like, you know, that's tough to do. Like they try to make you feel better, but they're doing the wrong stuff.
Sure.
Like you're supposed to encourage people around you. Like, and I'm always like telling people, take risks. Like, what's the worst fucking thing that can happen? What is the worst thing that can happen? You lose? You're not going to die.
You just learn.
You
learn how to do it better the next time.
And guess what? If you stay in that as long as you can, you're gonna have more. If you ever had to go and work, whether it's corporate America or do something like that, you have more experience and you have more leverage than anybody else you're competing against. Because when you step into that world, and I can tell you from experience, you're used to working your tail off and not seeing let's call it instant results or things like that. It's like a breather. Like you're like a rock star, and you're taking a breather because like these people don't know how to compete like you. They don't know what it's like to have, you know, rent against your back or numbers against your back, because most people that work in corporate America, the number one thing is they just want to do enough to get by and not lose their job.
100%.
And I feel like that's like the consensus. So,
if they could go from that mentality to a 9-to-5 mentality, leave the 9-to-5 mentality to the 7-figure mentality in that business, like even if they work for someone, you can leave that 9-to-5 mentality and treat that just like it's your own business.
Yes.
Because to me, every single corporate business has all these little businesses inside the big business.
Oh, yes.
Is how I look at it. And you've got your accounting group. This is a business. You've got this group. This is a business. You got this group. This is a business. Yep. But if you can leave that mentality of, I'm just a 9-to-5 employee, and go and treat it with a 7-figure mentality of, I'm an entrepreneur. I own this shit. Dude, it changes your whole life.
And I think people need to embody that more. And I think that's another thing too, is like and this is through experience, but then also just witnessing it. Most people are scared to go ask for funding. Most people are scared to reach out to successful people. I've never reached out to somebody that's way above me, and they know, like, if they know your character, they know you're trying, and like no successful person looks at somebody underneath them that works with them as a part of their company or anything and just says, if they're actually doing a really fucking good job, they don't want to lose them, and they will do whatever it takes. They will 100%. Make you part of it. Like they will do whatever it takes. And I think that's like a perception. Everybody wants to think, you know, whether they get let go or like things don't work out in their business, they want to blame everybody else. But I don't know. It's like being a coach on a team. parents will say, oh, well, that coach favors these. You know, maybe when you're kids.
Right.
But when you get to upper level, and I posted on Facebook about this before, and like a lot of people disagreed. But if you are paying money and you're playing competitive sports in high school or you're going to college, if you are not telling your child and pushing them and motivating them to be their best versus it's just some leisurely activity. If you are paying for it, if you're a parent paying for it, if the child's paying for it, whatever it may be, but they're just doing it it's just kind of fun. And they don't care if they get better or not, then what's the point?
What's the point?
And I
increase your value.
And some people have argued with me on that, and I don't like to argue. It's just like I'm always like, hey, if that's what you believe, feel free to believe it.
100%.
But I grew up in an environment where it's like, hey, like if I'm gonna spend money on you to go do this, and you need to have the pride to go and take it seriously. Because that's the same way you carry things through life. And kids these days, and I can't wrap my brain around, we employ tons of kids. My wife has tons of cousins. Like there's so many kids that I'm around. I was in coaching forever. And similar how you said you ran your first business, same way I coached people. Was literally, if you don't come in when the clock starts and you're late, the doors are shut.
Deion Sanders, what did he do to his own son? 5 minutes late. Benched his own son for a game.
Hey, but that's the thing.
That's the point, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like, it's not because I'm mad at you. I'm not frustrated. It's just like, that's my standard. And it's amazing to me that people these days do not want to have standards implemented upon them. They want this free chaos, and like they just don't. And it's kids, and it's their upbringing. And I think it's like millennials that were treated hard by their parents, but didn't appreciate that, and for whatever reason. And we're in a weird time where millennials are inheriting a lot of money, and there's just a lot of consumption in this world.
Sure.
But the kids, like, they just don't.
They're consumers. They live a consumer mentality.
Yeah, it's not it's not a value-based society.
No contribution at all.
And so we see it with employing kids. Like, there's a lot of good kids. I think kids are inherently good. I really do.
All my kids have worked fast food, restaurants, serving.
Correct. I think they're inherently good. I just think some of the parents' biases based on, it's going to be okay, Jimmy. It's going to be okay, Sally. Like, you didn't make your team. Like, now there's 5C teams at the high school. Like, what happened to the pride of, hey, I made varsity at this level?
Oh, yeah.
Or, hey, I'm a starter. Like, what happened to celebrating that versus celebrating, hey, I did my best and I made the team? It's okay not to be the best player, but like, shouldn't you aspire to be that?
Right.
And you get parents out there, they're like, no, I just, as long as he's working hard and doing his thing, like, I get that, but like, he should have pride. If you go work for a company, oh, I got let go, it just didn't work out. Like, no, like, you did something wrong. Like, you weren't providing enough value. Like, what's wrong with the honesty behind that? Because we're entrepreneurs. Outside of this, I'm in a commission-based industry. You get paid for what you perform.
Right.
And I don't know life any other way. And it's a hard way to look at yourself when it's like that, because there are ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs, there are peaks, there are troughs. But at the end of the day, if you don't understand that you have to weather those storms and everything's not going to be okay, I think that's what's created corporate America and kind of like society the way it's been going. And do I think it's going to be like that forever? No. There's different seasons.
Right.
There's people coming up now that, had it easy but then want more. And it'll change. It's just like, what's the gentleman's name? Tony Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
There's 4 seasons of life.
Love Tony Robbins.
And I think that people, once they hit that winter season, they have 2 choices. It's like, either I'm going to proceed further and I'm going to push through it, or I'm going to, just quit. And I think once we get through this cycle of basically, and this is just the world and how things are, like once the liquidity wipes out and once like the consumption phase is over and we have to have innovation, creation, things that like we don't have, and competitiveness, I think it'll change.
We're not forced to have to survive.
We're not. And like people, the United States, what is it, 200 years maybe? Like we have this finite timeline of like, it's how it's been forever. But forever is not that long.
No.
Does that make sense to you?
100%.
We try to think of, everybody wants to be an absolutist, and I am not an absolutist. I think there's multiple ways to get to the end zone, multiple ways to thread the needle. And we live in this era and generation of finite, absolutist ideas. Like, this is the way. And I hate that, because there's multiple ways to be successful.
100%.
And we teach people, this is how you do it, this is the only way, versus the principles and the know-how to ebb and flow through those situations. Because situations are going to change, variables are going to change. How you think and how you use your mind to get through those is not what people seem to be teaching. And they seem to just think like, okay, this is how you're going to get through grade school, this is how you're going to get through here. Like,
sure.
Let's not talk about complicated things. Let's not talk about complicated situations. Your feelings might get hurt. Or, I mean, I'm serious. Like,
but you're right, though, dude. I was always told years ago, Eric, so when you work construction, let me tell you this.
Oh, construction's the best industry, though, because those guys have no filter. And
there is no filter.
I love it.
I mean, I can tell you, when I've been in construction since I was 18 years old, and when I say zero filter, there's no filter. I had a boss, he goes, Eric, Don't bring your feelings to work. He said, if you bring them to work, someone's going to hurt your feelings.
They want to hurt your feelings.
They want to hurt your feelings.
I worked side jobs with my dad growing up, and we're bricklayers, and like let's talk about bricklayers. Bricklayers, and this is why like my perception, I get along with everybody. Like you can be a bum on the street, or you can be a high level.
I'm the same kind of guy. I get along with anybody.
Like I find the good in people, and like I don't get caught up in all like the crazy stuff. But let's be honest, a lot of construction guys, like you'll meet guys, and for whatever reason, they're just kind of fucked up. Like they owe child support, they don't have a valid driver's license, they don't show up to work every day, they can only get paid cash because
they bath salts. I mean, I can go on and on and on.
And like they are some of the nicest people.
Oh, they are.
Best quality people you ever meet, and like either they got a disorder or something. Like I don't know what it is, but it's like they're great people still, but like they're like they just want to beat people down. And they love it. I remember being a young kid on scaffolding on a 100-degree roof, and like the guys I would work with, I was like 18, 19 years old, and I'd be like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? Like just the most repulsive, absurd things.
Oh yeah.
And at first I hated it, but then like the more I got to know those guys, I'm just like, that's just their way of life.
Sure.
It's for me to judge and say there's something wrong with it. I don't like judging other people because we all make our own choices. And if I would have made your choice, I'd be you.
Right.
So, but those guys like, it really taught me to find the good in people, and like
100%.
I can't also fix people because you want to fix those guys and you can't.
But there's really nothing to fix. It's just who they are.
Yeah, and it's
and as long as who they are isn't hurting other people intentionally. I mean, I use cuss words all the time, but I say cuss words. I don't use them in a derogatory way towards you.
Of course.
To me, they're just a word. It's nothing. It's nothing but just a fucking word. Like I just said the word fuck. I mean, it's just a word, and that's it.
Just adds a little bit of flair. And
it just adds a little bit of like excitement, like ooh, you know what I mean? A little bit ooh, But it's so I can go on and on. Look. So I think we're about an hour and 21 minutes into this.
Are you shitting me?
No, this went by fast.
Oh my god.
I know, right? So this was a lot to say. I could keep going for another hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. This is my problem when I start talking. I love to hear stories, love to talk about things. So we're just going to wind this down.
Sure.
So if you could give any new business owner any advice, what would it be?
Find somebody that's doing exactly what you want to do.
So find a mentor.
Find a mentor, and don't have too big of an ego, and stop telling yourself that you're going to do it differently because you're way smarter than them.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying from experience. I used to, when you think you know everything, and I have to remind myself that all the time, you think, I know everything, I'm smarter than them. But the thing is like you don't need to be smarter than them. Like first get to where they are, and then you can do what you want to do instead of trying to do it your own way while you have somebody there that can help you shortcut it. Because those were the mistakes I made. And if I could redo it all over again, I would have listened to the people that said, hey, slow down, or hey, do this differently.
Right.
But I was living on a mountain. I thought nothing could ever go wrong. And
until the wave came through, washed the mountain out from under you.
And now my everything I do is the complete opposite. I'm focused on today. I'm focused on executing the best way I can and listening to people that have different opinions, but have also, most importantly, done what I want to do.
Right.
And have more experience in me, because that is part of what we talked about, outsourcing what you do. And I think more so it's knowing the right questions to ask.
Sure.
And vetting people a lot better.
Yes.
And then leaning on them versus just listening to everybody and just trying to create an opinion out of 10 different people's opinions versus I believe in you with this regarding this, we're going to go with you. I believe based on your experience this, so find a mentor. Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it.
So when I look at mentorship in this way. You may find a mentor today that solves your problems for today. Because when you want to hire sometimes a really expensive, like let's say you wanted to hire Jay Abraham. Do you know who that is?
Jay Abraham. He's the one that made Gillette famous and a bunch of other brands.
Right. One of the highest paid marketing experts in the world. You want to market your business, you're going to say, well, I'm going to hire Jay Abraham. Well, great. You're going to spend $100,000 a day? I mean, you're not at that point yet.
Yes.
So don't be afraid to hire someone who has only done a little bit of where you want to be, because you're not there yet either.
Correct.
They're here. You're still stuck down here. But you're like, well, they don't know enough. Well, no, they knew a lot more to get where they wanted to be.
Correct.
And you're still, but when you get to that point, now you say, well, now what? So I look at how I spent $25,000 on hiring my first mentorship. Then I hired, and then I kept them for 3 years, and we continued to pay them every year. Then I hired someone else for $35,000 for a year. Then I think this year I spent $105,000 on mentors this year. But the idea of mentorship to me is, don't be afraid to start at a smaller level, just because for someone who's already doing what you want to do, or they're just a little bit further ahead of you, because remember, they still know more than you, because you may not be able to afford the high-end ones. So don't be afraid to ask. And I always say this, you get 100% of what you don't ask for in life. If you don't ask, you can't fucking have it.
Hey, you gotta shoot your shot, you know.
I mean, so I have Brian Tracy. Do you know who Brian Tracy is?
No.
Great love author. So Brian Tracy wrote all those little books up there. He's written probably 115, 120 books. One of my favorite authors. When I wrote my second book, I wrote a book on marriage. I said, I'm going to get Brian Tracy I'm going to get somebody to write a testimony for my book. I'm like, I want to just give something. So I sent a letter to Grant Cardone, Brian Tracy, other people. Brian Tracy responded. To me, it was gold. It was the biggest gold thing. And when I shared this with people who knew who he was as a famous author, they were shocked. I'm like, well, how'd you do that? I'm like, I just asked.
You know, just one small point on that. Whenever I was getting out of college and I was figuring out what I wanted to do some internships with different pro programs in St. Louis.
Right.
And I got responses from both of these guys. First one was Michael Gersh, the GM of the Cardinals.
Okay.
And then the
Very
second
nice.
one was, and I don't remember because I'm not a huge hockey fan, but it was the Blues general manager. And at the time, and I literally went on, and they don't list emails, they don't list contact info, but it was just like being resourceful. I found out what all the combinations could have been for the emails. I sent this email template out, like, hey, like I want to come do this.
I love
here.
it.
And I sent it to like 15 different ones because it could be like M Gersh or, you know, Gersh M at Cardinals.com.
Right.
Like literally just would pump them out to all the different ones because I figured one would land. It's amazing, and this is what we talked about earlier. You don't get what you don't ask for. Both of those gentlemen responded to me. Multiple paragraphs explaining kind of the process and different things like that and like insights into what they do. And they not only responded to me, but they kept following up with me after that. And I thought that was pretty amazing.
That's huge. All because you asked.
All because you asked. Same thing when I was traveling different facilities. I'd DM guys or call their facility and be like, hey, I'm a young, hungry guy. I want to come learn. Like, what's it going to take?
Do you know what? Those are the words right there that mentors love to hear. I'm a young, hungry guy, and I want to come learn.
And people are very receptive to that.
They're receptive to that. When you come down with that fucking ad that your cup is filled, well, motherfucker, they don't give two shits about you.
Fuck no.
You walk in there and say, look, my fucking cup is empty. I need you to help me fill this fucker up.
The ones that don't even, that you can tell are really doing some big stuff and like they don't even realize it.
It's huge. But just ask for what you want. Even, they may say no, but that's okay. Who gives a shit? Just fucking ask anyway. Because you know what the coolest thing was? When I got that email back from him, he says, hey, send me a transcript of your book. Then when he sent me a fucking, testimony, I'm like, dude, I fucking hit the gold mine. I mean, I didn't give a shit if I ever sold one book. I didn't care about that.
That's awesome.
I got something that was so important to me, which was a testimony from one of my favorite authors. And the guy's probably worth $100 million.
Sure.
He's just phenomenal business author. But he goes back to the Jim Rohn days.
And attests to his character, though, too, the fact that he did that.
Oh, huge.
Because I think every time you meet somebody, your impression's everything. And people don't forget that.
Oh my God, dude! What a
You'll be
phenomenal.
cheering him You'll be cheering him on forever,
dude, for the rest of my life. I love this guy, and he's probably 85 right now, but he's one of my favorite people.
That's
because
awesome.
he did everything I wanted to do, but that's the key. It's just ask.
Yep.
So all right. So we're gonna end it with my favorite part is my book, my 3,000 Questions About Me book. We have no idea what we're about to ask Tanner, so it's just gonna be some random question we open the book to. All right, so here we go. Okay. This is a good one for you. Is there something missing from your life? Is there something missing from Tanner's life? Maybe some pizza.
It's a great question. You know, in the past, I would have said being fulfilled. I wouldn't answer to that as being the case now, but I think, man, that's a good question.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. And my best answer is a non-answer. I think sometimes every time we go through phases of life where there's something is missing. And I think for me, for a long time, that was purpose.
Purpose.
And
huge.
When I had my daughter and then finally started seeing like what I wanted to become, and that's a person that's impactful in the community and doing what I do on social media, where it's going to new businesses, highlighting what's going on around everywhere, and making cool videos and doing cool things. And whether it's cool concepts, cool videos, I have never felt more fulfilled than I have now with that, because I like meeting people, I like getting out there, and it's something I was super uncomfortable with when I first started doing. It was you almost embarrassed about.
Oh yeah.
And I'd say that was missing for a long time, and it doesn't feel missing anymore. Now I think I'll reach another point where something feels like it's missing, and I'll have to ask myself the right questions to navigate that
Sure.
and push through it. But right now, nothing feels like it's missing. And I think that's like
it's a good feeling.
It's a great feeling. And it's not only a great feeling, it's something that like I try to inherently keep in mind and ask myself every day. So that way it doesn't get to that point where like I'm walking on a mountain again. I feel like I'm at the top and I'm not being receptive and self-aware of what's around me to where I can adjust that as time goes on. Does that make sense?
100%. 100%.
And that's kind of like the best answer I can give to that, because my goal is to never not be fulfilled.
Right.
But it's also like I'm very proactive about it. And that's what I do, is whether it's journaling, reading, I read a ton.
Self-awareness.
Yes, I read a ton on psychology because I always...
All those books are on psychology, shit like that back there.
Well, I think it's important to not only, it's like the absolute way. It's like, hey, this is, I can read a Tony Robbins book, and then if I just build my life off of that, like that's one way. I didn't learn different tools, different resources.
Right.
And the more you read, the more you pull things out, and it's like, this makes sense, and you find out what works for you.
Sure.
And what your ideal mindset is.
And you can put that purpose together and make that purpose work.
And that's what I believe in, because like our environment's always going to change, everything's going to change.
Always evolving.
But our mind is what we can control. Our bodies will change, but if we can keep our mind sharp, and for me at 27 too, like that was the biggest thing, was like I always
Jamie, you're just a kid.
Yeah, I always wanted to understand.
Just a kid.
I always wanted to understand the mind though. I grew up in a chaotic environment. It wasn't the best. It was a very different environment, and I think like when you're young and you have different types of trauma, you want to understand why things happen.
Sure.
And how things worked, and that really drove me to understanding the traumas I had and the mindset I had and what propelled me towards that to what I've evolved into now. We're always evolving.
So I think I want to do this with you again sometime, but I really want to next time. I don't usually want to plan anything, but I want to plan the next one about being a young entrepreneur.
Sure.
Because what I see people all the time, I don't know enough. That's always the issue. I don't know enough.
But you got to just take action.
I don't know enough.
That's a big thing that like, and I'll tell you what, even Kyle, like he's a guy that I looked at, and like you're always, I wouldn't say competing, but it's like I love seeing other people do things around me.
Oh yeah, see people killing the shit.
Especially
100%.
when other people, you hear people talk about people that are actually doing stuff. And what I loved about that, and really admired, and I took, like you learn from everybody, but I love seeing him as a younger guy, like even younger than me, seeing that success, because it really made me believe too. It's like I used to catch myself, I don't know enough to make this decision.
Right.
And like then it turned into just do it.
Just do it.
And like that was a big change too, where it's like we're now, as what you're saying is like that was a big thing, and you had been on a podcast with him, and it's cool because like he lives in the same neighborhood as me. We have mutual friends, and I loved watching what he did too, because not everybody's always going to be the smartest. They're not always going to be the most creative, but they're always going to, you can do two things. You can be resourceful and just go. And he had a big impact on that. Like I really loved watching that.
Oh, did he? Huge. I tell Kyle all the time, I'm like, Kyle, I know so much that you'll never know, or that you just don't know.
And he just does it.
But I said, Kyle, but you know so much I don't know.
Yep.
I said, I am double your age. He's friends with my kids. That's how I know Kyle.
Oh, nice.
So he's been friends with my girls for years, and that's how
awesome.
They've all hung out. But Kyle is the guy who just did it.
And I love that, because that's something I was missing, where like not missing, but you're always self-aware. And just watching him do it, I was like, okay, I need to get better at that.
That's what I go to Kyle. I go to Kyle as a mentor. I treat Kyle as a mentor. I'm like, Kyle, you know something I need to know. Help me with this. Help me with this. And Kyle works. But also when Kyle first started, I remember Kyle's first job ever coming to my office with his little red pickup truck in his trailer, picking up some shit from our office that we wanted to get rid of. But the point is so we'll have to do this again so we can talk about mental health, health, talk about being a young entrepreneur, how we can all make this come together, because this is Suicide Awareness Month. That's why it's this never goes away from me as a parent, because I had a child commit suicide, and you obviously shared your experience. So I want to say thank you for that, because that's you put you out there as very vulnerable. But at the end of the day, people can have better lives. Just don't give up. Find a way to live. Find a way to fight. It's just that is all. I have a shirt from Till Valhalla that says, "Be the reason they don't quit." Yes. That is the thing right there. We have to be the reason people don't quit. That's the number one thing.
And people just have to not be afraid to get help.
Not be afraid to get help.
If you're around them, like
holy shit, yes.
Be transparent about experiences, just like you were with your son. Like, you know what? Like I use my experience to not try to like lead others or anything. It's just like nobody was around me open about it when I was going through stuff. And
sure.
People always think like the people that look like they have a glamorous life. You have the car you always like. You have everything you always wanted, and it's like you can still feel like shit. And
you can still feel like shit, right?
And that's why I'm transparent about it. I'd love to do that and talk more about it, but I don't want anybody to feel like I did. And luckily I had a good support system around me, and not everybody has that. And as a parent, I think it's even harder because if you've never gone through it, you don't understand.
Right.
And like even my parents, like it was hard for them to understand.
Well, it was I didn't understand it.
You don't, and it's just like I can tell you from that mindset of when in my head like something would have happened by the grace of God, whatever happened, like it just like I said, like in my mind, luckily I had been courageous enough to say, you know what, like if I'm not scared of this, I don't have anything to be scared of.
Right.
But I don't think if I had the support system around me that things would have been maybe different.
Sure.
I may have not made that decision, and something else, I wouldn't be here right now.
You just don't know.
So I'm very sympathetic.
But I'm glad you
that.
chose life.
I am too. I am too. It makes you, it just goes to test like not everything's going to be perfect, and
Shit, no.
even when it's bad, like I think a lot of people can live lives that are less than extraordinary. But I think I was just an incredibly passionate person about life, and I had to figure out how I was going to live life on those terms.
And you just got to be honest with yourself, 100%. All right, well, we'll wrap it up with this. All right, so we want to say, first of all, thank you so much for watching our podcast, listening to this podcast. We're so grateful that you're here. We had Tanner Dallas here. He is a serial entrepreneur. We love having entrepreneurs here. He's a business owner, a young guy, 27 years old. Everything he's done, you can do yourself too. You don't have to think that you can't do something just because you don't have the schooling, the knowledge, the education, whatever it is you think you don't have. You can do these things too. So this is Business for Beginners, where we share the good, the bad, and the funny. This is raw, unscripted, truthful business knowledge for the aspiring entrepreneur who wants to grow their empire. Thank you so much for watching. And Tanner, thank you for being here.
Thank you yourself.